Hi everyone, you are viewing Cloud Ranger's Microsoft Azure training. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Sean Ismail. I'm a cloud architect with Lead, and that's my contact information for Twitter, email, as well as LinkedIn. Today's topic is part two of Azure Cloud Services, and we are going to talk about deploying cloud service. In the first part, we talked about what a cloud service was and what you can do in a cloud service, how to identify various kinds of cloud services, because we figured out that there is more than one way of expressing what a cloud service was, and how you can use Visual Studio to deploy into a cloud service. We pretty much went and hosted a website or put up a website. So today we are going to concentrate more on deploying the cloud service and what constitutes or what steps constitutes deploying a cloud service. So let's get started. So anytime someone talks about deploying to a cloud service, what they basically mean is that uploading a couple of files to a cloud service. So when you are uploading to cloud services, there are two things you're uploading. You're uploading a package and you're uploading a cloud service configuration file. I'll get into the details of what these two files are, but .cspkg is the package file, so that's the extension. And then you have the cloud service configuration file, which is .cscfg. So pkg will be for package and cfg is for configuration. And anytime you are deploying to a cloud service, basically you are uploading these two files. Now, before we get into details of what that is, let's talk about the methods of deployment. So there are various ways you can deploy this package stuff to cloud service in Azure. And the four ways is one is through Visual Studio Publish Wizard, which is pretty much the previous session I sort of went through real fast to show you how that works. Then you have a command line tool called CSPack. It's a command line utility that you can download, and it uses Azure SDK to create the package file, to create the service configuration file for you. Then you have the management portal. And obviously, when I say the management portal, we also need to talk about the Azure Preview portal. You can do it from both places. And of course, you can use PowerShell to use for deploying to the cloud service. So for now, let's remember that anytime we talk about deploying cloud service, we are talking about uploading two files. Now let's get into some details. Deploying cloud packages, even if there are two files that are involved for uploading, there are actually three components required to deploy a cloud service. A couple of them we already talked about. We talked about the cloud service package and we talked about the cloud service configuration file, but there is also a cloud service definition file. So let's get into details of what a cloud service package is. Cloud service package, it actually consists of your application codes and resources. So this is something the developer does. The developer will develop your web application, and what they will do is they'll have all the resources that are required for the web application, and they'll create a package and most likely hand over to you, the person who is involved for taking care of the infrastructure. So this is a package that the developers will create for you. This package, even though the extension is .cspkg, it actually uses a package format which is like the zip format. So technically, you could take a .cspkg and rename it to .zip, and you'll be able to browse the contents of the package. So it uses the same format. And I think it started from the Azure SDK version 1.7. So if it was before that, I doubt it was in a zip format. But since version 1.7 of the Azure SDK, it's in a zip format. So it's quite easy to view what's in there. Okay, but the extension will always be .cspkg. Then you have the cloud service definition file, which is .csdef, DEF for definition. Definition file is what actually defines the service model. So the cloud service model is defined in this file. It basically tells Azure that, what are the settings that are going to be used to create the cloud service, the number of roles that are going to be in there. So this definition file and the cloud service package file together are, uh, you know, together packaged, and that's what the package is. So when we say that there are two files, the CSPKG will have the CSDEF file for defining how the service model is going to be. So you are not going to go and see a CSDEF file to upload. It will be there with the package file when you deploy. And of course, then you have the cloud service configuration file, which is the .cscfg, which pretty much contains the entire configuration settings for the cloud service and the individual roles. So it tells how the cloud service is going to be configured. It's going to be that, okay, the cloud definition file told us how many roles and everything are going to be there. So how these roles are going to be configured. So it also tells you the number of role instances that are going to be in there. So the main files that we should be taking care of is number 1 and number 3. Of course, the definition file is also there to define how the model is going to be, or how uh, Azure is going to create the cloud service. So we are going to go into details of these files momentarily. But before that, I want to talk about the deployment as well. Just like Azure websites, if you have followed my series for Azure websites, um, if you recall, we talked about slots for deployment. So you have two slots. You have a production slot and you have a staging slot. So when you are deploying these packages, you have an option to deploy to these two slots. The reason these slots are there is to actually control how you're deploying. So for example, if you are deploying a website for your users to test, you do not want it to go and get deployed to production right away. You want it in a staging slot where it's basically an environment that is going to be there where your QA or testers or pilot users are going to go and test your web application or website and find out if everything is okay or not. Once everything is there in the staging and everything is okay, you can swap it with production environment. So as soon as it goes to production, that's the URL, or that's the web service, or that's the website that's live. So that's the URL people are going to have. So that's something the public consumes. So you have to, it's a good idea to first deploy to a staging and make sure everything is okay before you swap it to production. So we will also go into details of what this VIP swap is and how it works and get to um, how you can get to staging to production and make it live. So I'm not going to take more time in going over the theory or the concept, because if you have sort of grasped a bit of concepts over here, it will be much easier for us to get into the demo and talk about it over there. So let's go to my client machine and actually get started with the hands-on part of this session. All right, so I'm in my Azure Preview portal. This is my account I'm logged in as. So last time we used the management portal over here. I mean, I used this to give you a demo how your cloud services can be created and how you can deploy to this cloud service. I'm going to use the Azure Preview portal today because that's where we all are, doing everything these days. So, and Microsoft wants you to start using the preview as much as possible. There are some limitations, obviously, but we'll see. So I did go through creating a cloud service before in my last session, but I'm going to do that again just for the sake of completion and to make sure that you understand how to do this in preview, this preview portal as well. So it's quite simple. Let's go ahead on new here, and we are going to go under compute. In compute, scroll the way down, and then we're going to go to cloud service. And in cloud service, we're going to go create. So let's go ahead and give a unique name here. I'm going to call mine Ranger Web. Let's see if this is available. Well, it's not. So Ranger Web 1 maybe. Okay, so looks like it's available over here. As you recall, this has to be unique because it's going to go with .cloudapp.net. So this is my subscription. I am going to create a new resource group. I'm going to call mine Ranger resource group, and this is going to be in East 2. Select the location. My location is going to be East US 2. Obviously, I'm going to pick your one. And if you look over here, it's actually asking you if you want to put in a package or certificate over here, okay? So we're going to leave this alone for now. You can see that it's actually telling it's optional here. So we are going to basically just go and create the cloud service, and that's all we are going to do here. We are not going to upload any package. We're not going to do anything like that. So the deployment has started. It doesn't take too long because this is just a basic cloud service. All right, so the deployment is over. It has succeeded. Let's go to browse everything here. That'll be the easiest way. And the cloud service Ranger Web 1 has been created in this resource group. So let's go ahead and click on that. Let's see if we can find any information. And it will tell you that nothing deployed to this environment. So it's basically telling you that there is a cloud service that's created, but nothing has been deployed. So we know that before you deploy anything to a cloud service in Microsoft Azure, it must be packaged, right? So let's go ahead and talk about all that in Visual Studio, because the Visual Studio is what we are going to use basically to, create our resources, and basically I'm going to demonstrate the first how to deploy from Visual Studio. If you recall, I talked about 4 or 5 ways to deploy to a cloud service. Visual Studio is probably the easiest one because this is providing you an integrated environment. You can build your resources here, and you can also go and, publish your resource directly to the cloud service from Visual Studio. So Visual Studio will take those two, create the package for you, and obviously create the service configuration file, and it will take that and upload that for you. And it's all in a Visual IDE format here, right? So it's probably the easiest way to develop. So if you're a developer, and if you have access to your Azure tenant, you should be able to do this all by yourself, relatively in a very simple way. So what we are going to do is do File, New, and we're going to create a project, not a website. It's going to be a project. Once we click on that, we are going to create, okay, it's asking for my subscription information because it sort of realized what I was trying to do. So let's go ahead and log into my Microsoft account. At this point, you're going to do the same as well if it prompts for you. So I'm going to create an Azure Cloud Service. Like I mentioned in my last session, if you do not see the Azure Cloud Service over here, it will give you the information on how to download the Azure SDK and install that so the Azure Cloud Service shows up here, okay? So I'm here under Visual C# Cloud and then Azure Cloud Service. I'm going to call my cloud service as Azure Cloud Service 1. Do remember that this cloud service name over here, for example, the one I named was, let's scroll over here, Ranger Web 1. This and this does not have to match. Okay, this is just a project file that's getting created. Like you can see, it's under projects here. So let's create OK here. Once you create OK, now this is the part where we are going to talk about the service definition, right? We're going to talk about how this cloud service is going to be modeled. So are there going to be web roles? Are there going to be worker roles? What are we going to have? So the stuff that we talked about last time was the web role and the worker role. So we'll have both worker role as well as web role in our cloud service. I hope you recall that there were these two roles, like a web role and a worker role. If you don't, then please go and view the last session to understand that. So I'm going to name my role here Ranger Web Role 1, and I'm going to go over here and go Ranger Worker Role 1. This is easy for me to identify. Now, some of you noticed, and someone actually emailed me about this one, is that why do I put Ranger or anything besides the name, and if people can go with default stuff? You know what? You can name anything you want. The reason I put Ranger over here or Ranger before most names is so I can identify that those are the stuff I have put in there. So when I see Ranger something or something Ranger, I know that I have created that or there was an option for me to create that. It's easy for me to identify. Okay, so I'm going to have these two roles, one worker role and one web role, and let's create OK. So it's going to create our project now. And I'm not going to select any specific ASP.NET project template. I'm going to just make it an empty one because I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible. If you're a web developer, you want to do web forms or MVC, which is very popular, feel free. But I'm basically just going to have a web page, and that's all. I'm doing it for my simplicity's sake and to make sure that we can concentrate on other things rather than web development. So it's creating the project right now. You can see that it's working on the roles. So I'm going to pause a little bit. All right, a couple of seconds later, it went and put up the code here. I do not want this code, so you can close all of that. Let's minimize this a little bit. So as you can see on the right-hand side, there's the Azure Cloud Service 1 project. We have two roles, Ranger Web role and Ranger Worker role, and this is the cloud configuration file, which I double-clicked, so it opened up. You can actually see the stuff in here. But I'm not trying to do that right now. Let's go ahead to the web role and let's actually add a new item. So I'm going to go to add here and add a new item. And I'm going to say that I just want a basic HTML page. I'm going to call mine default.htm. Click on add. So it basically brings up a little HTML file. I'm going to say hello world, and I'm going to just call this basic. Okay, you can put whatever text you want. I'm just trying to put something so I can remember what page I have. So these are similar stuff to what I did last time in the last session. This is nothing new. So let's go ahead to the cloud service here and go ahead and publish it. Okay, so let's click on publish. It's looking for my subscription. If you have not connected, this will be the time you connect to your Azure tenant. As you can see, I'm already signed in. It already went and picked up my subscription. Let's go ahead next. So as you recall last time, I mentioned that when you deploy a cloud service, it either gets deployed from your local computer, or you could take the package and you can upload the package and the configuration file to a storage, cloud storage, and you can deploy from there. So this is why it actually asks you to create a storage account. I do not have a storage account, so I'm going to just create one. I'm going to call this Ranger Store 0001, something like that. Region East US 2. I'm going to just make it locally redundant. Nothing fancy here. Great. So it created the storage account. Right now, it's asking what the cloud service is going to be. So as you can see, it went and picked up the Ranger Web 1 cloud service that we had created, Ranger Web 1. It went pick that up. If you recall about the slots, this is where the slots coming. It's asking that do you want this in production or do you want this in staging? Okay, I'm saying that let's go directly to production for the sake of it. Uh, the other thing I'm going to check over here is enable remote desktop. If you recall, I mentioned that you can actually log in and get into uh, your worker or web role remote desktop. That's the good part about cloud service. So I'm going to say that, okay, I am going to enable the remote desktop. Click on next. Looks like everything is ready. Let's go ahead and click on publish. This publishing obviously takes time for the sake of simplicity and to save some time here. I'm going to pause once this gets started. So it looks like the publishing has get started. It's deploying to Ranger Web Production. It's pending, means it's actually working on things. So I'll be back once both the roles are up and running, and we'll take it from there. But so far, what we have done, we did exactly what we did last time. Okay. As you can see, it verified the storage account. Now it's uploading the package. So Visual Studio already created the package for us, and it's uploading it. So this is the reason that doing this deployment from Visual Studio is so much easier because it does everything for you. So I'll be back once these things are up. Well, now that it is still actually deploying, the system is initializing right now. But what I want to talk about right now is the actual deployment package file, okay, while this happens in the backend. So let's go to the projects folder. This is where my Visual Studio projects are located, right? Your projects might be based on wherever it's located on your computer when you installed Visual Studio, but this is where by default mine went. So Azure Cloud Service 1 was my project. In here, not the packages, but let's go to the Azure Cloud Services 1 as well. I want to go to the binary folder. I'm going to go to the release folder and app.publish. See, this is where the package is. You remember the CSPKG? This is the package that's get uploaded, and this is the service configuration file. So these are the two files that actually get uploaded to Azure, and that's what makes everything happen in the cloud service. So I just wanted to point that out. If you take this package, obviously, and you know double click on it, nothing interesting will happen there. But I just want to paste over here and make a copy, and I want to show you something. If you recall, I mentioned that this was a zip file format. So if you actually go and do a .zip, um, you should be able to see that this actually converted to a zip folder, and in a zip folder you can actually double click and go inside, so you can actually see the stuff that went in the package folder from here. Okay, so if you're a developer, this might be important for you. So this is where things are. Ideally, nothing happens with the zip folder here, so you can delete that. This is the main two files that are important for you. If you're a developer and you're using Visual Studio, this can go directly. And if you are an infrastructure guy, the developer person might just hand you over this to files and say, hey, this is the package and this is the configuration. Go ahead and deploy it. So you take that and you deploy them manually, and I'll show you how momentarily. But those are the main important file here. The other thing I wanted to show over here, looks like this has completed. So the other thing I want to show you over here is that when you go to the service configuration file, there are actually two files. One is cloud and one is local. If you see over here, this is only the cloud one, the local one is not there. The reason the cloud and the local is there is because this is the configuration file that's going up to the cloud. But if you want to, go and check this application out manually, uh, the local configuration file is the one that's going to be used, which is basically going to use the local connection strings, local storage for uploading. So what I mean is that if you go and click on Internet Explorer here, um, it will go and fire up the Internet Explorer, and it will show you what your web application is and all of that. As you can see, it's started the emulator. So it is still going to use the local CS CFG file, but it's going to emulate the application in how it's going to be in Azure, right? So it's going through a bunch of hoops to do that for you. So it's created the Azure emulator. Let's go and wait for it to fire up. So it's going to fire up the browser. It's a very basic web page, so all it's showing is hello world for me. If it's a web application, obviously there's going to be more robust stuff. But do remember that this cloud.cscfg, the configuration file, is the one that's uploaded. The difference between those two are that local will have the local connection strings or local storage, whatever that may be. Okay, let's go to the activity log here. Looks like our cloud app is done. So this is actually live production. So anyone with this URL should be able to go and go to the web page. Hello World Basic. That's what we have. So up to this much is the stuff that we have done last time, right? So nothing has been different. So let's go to the cloud service over here and explore a little bit on things that happened. As you can see right now, when we go to the cloud service, it's telling us that this is the URL, this is the public IP address, and all that stuff. There are two instances there. There was one instance for Ranger Web Role 1 and the Ranger Worker Role 1. Okay, both of the sizes were small by default. Let's go to all settings here. You can go to properties, and you can see all the information over here. Okay, so I'm just browsing over here. Feel free to pause and discover what is where by yourself. It's very important in the learning process that you take time. Since this is a video, you're obviously not watching this live, so feel free to pause and explore. And those might be information that you are interested in, right? So when I come over here, I'm interested in the public IP, I'm interested in the URL, some of the endpoints for my web role and worker role. As you can see, the web role where the web server and IIS is, this is where you go, the port 80, there's a deployment ID and all that fancy stuff. Let's go to the configuration tab. In configuration tab, it basically has some information and we will go over these details later. So let's close that. Let's close this as well. I want to show you that we are actually in Ranger Web Production, right? So we're in the production slot. If we go over here and go to the staging slot, obviously we are not going to find anything here. But if you go to the production slot, this is where everything is. So let's actually hit that, right? So let's go over here and go say that instead of basic, first to staging. So this time when we are going to publish this, we are going to publish this to the staging slot rather than the production slot. So the way we do that is we go to publish. Uh, since we published it once, it came over here, but let's go previous. Instead of the production environment, this time we are going to do the staging environment. Okay, so let's go ahead and click next. Everything else is going to remain the same, and we are going to put publish over here. It will take the same amount of time to actually go and spin up a couple of roles in your staging environment. So this time I'm going to pause and come back totally when things are up and running. Okay. Alrighty, looks like it's completed. So we just deployed to production earlier here, and this is the one I just did right now for staging. I want to show you one difference right away. So in production, it was going to Ranger web1.cloudapp.net. It's going to production. If you look in staging, you'll see that it actually has this alphanumeric random number here, .cloudapp.net. The reason for having this over here is that it's very, it is telling you quite firmly that this is not something you share in production or with your people, right? This is just sharing with your QA or your pilot users. It's live, actually. If you click on this, you will be able to go over here and it says first to staging. If you recall, our previous one was Hello World Basic. So if you come over here and refresh this, it is still going to be Hello World Basic. As far as the rest of the world is concerned, this is where your web application or website is. But this is where obviously your staging is. So this is the URL you share with your internal people. They go over there, find out if everything is working or not. Once they give you a go and say, hey, you know what, everything is okay here. If you see last time when we came over here, this is where production was in the production slot and the staging slot was empty. So let's go to the staging slot here, and this time you should be able to see that this is the staging URL and you have two roles in here as well. So the way to promote your staging to your production would be actually quite simple. You just come over here and click on swap. Okay, it's as simple as that. It will take your entire content from here in your staging and take it to your production, just like how as your websites are, if you followed those videos. Similar concept to do the same things. So let's go ahead and swap that. I'll click on that. It's telling you that what's going to go where. There are two roles here, current production. There are two over here. So next time when we come over here, Ranger Web 1.cloudapp.net and refresh that, we will actually end up seeing first to staging there. Oops, my tabs moved here a little bit. So let's come over here and it disappeared. Anywho, not a big deal. Let's go ahead and swap that right now. So let's click OK. It takes a little bit of time because a lot of things are happening in the back end. You can see on the top, it actually says VIP swap in progress. So it takes some time. So I'll pause and I'll come back. Alrighty, it actually tells VIP swap was successful on top over here. Okay, so if I go to Ranger Web 1 here and click on refresh, this is my production. This time it actually went and got the staging content. So if you recall, first was staging was our staging content. So if I go to our staging content, which is this URL, I'll see Hello World Basic. So as you can see, it swapped the information. It's not like it took the staging to production and just left it over there. It actually swapped locations. The reason for this swapping is for whatever reason, if somebody actually goes to production and finds out after all that there was a problem and something is wrong, it does not want you to lose your previous production information. So you could easily go back to staging and swap your previous configuration, which hopefully has been running for a while, to come back into the original production here. So that's how the swapping works, and that's what the slots are used for. Okay, so let's go back here. I want to do one more thing. So let's actually talk about doing this manually. Okay, so let's change the content here, and I'm going to call this manual content. So the manual deployment. So this time, let's assume that you're not going to do this from Visual Studio. The developer is going to hand you over those two files, and that's all you're going to have, and you need to upload that. So the way you will do that, so the developer will most likely come over here and basically just rather than publish, say package, right? In package, it's asking that where you want to be. So yeah, the service configuration is going to be a cloud. The build configuration is going to be release enabled. There's not a whole lot that will happen over here. So click on package. What it does is that rather than going and publishing everything for you, it's going to just basically create those two files, the package and the configuration. It doesn't take too long. In fact, right after it does that, it actually brings up the location where the package and the configuration files are. So you basically take these two packages and do whatever you need to do. So let's come over here. I'm going to show you two things through this. I'm going to show you how to actually use a package directly from here, and at the same time upload the current content while the sites are there through a package. So one way over here was when we came to the cloud service, we were creating it. If you recall, actually, let's follow this. Go to compute and go to cloud service here. So let's do a create. And this is where it's asking you for the optional package, right? So if you click on this, it's asking you the same thing. So it went and picked up a storage. It's asking for your deployment name. Let's just say test deployment, whatever. If you look here, it's by default asking you for two files, a package file and a configuration file, right? So when you click the package file over here, it basically is looking for the CS package or the zip file. So you take this one, you say, okay, this is going to be what it is, and it uploads that for you. And you go to the configuration, you can see it's actually looking for the configuration file. It's all in the same location, right? This is all in the same location. It's coming over here, and you take this. Basically, at this point, it's asking you if it is going to be in the environment is going to be production or staging, and you say production or whatever. And it's giving you a notice here that deploy even if one or more role contains a single instance. So if you recall, we have two roles, web role and the worker role, and we just had one web role instance and one worker role instance. This is not supported by Microsoft SLA. What I mean by that, it will still work. We have one instance for both those roles and it's perfectly working fine. It's just that it's trying to tell you that, hey, if you have just one role, Microsoft is not going to provide their financial backing for the SLA if something is going on, they're upgrading something, and you're not going to have any downtime. So it's basically telling you that deploy even if there's one role. It's basically not going to deploy in our scenario because we have just one instance each till we actually click on this one, and that's when it will deploy because it's sort of making us accept the fact that it's going to be different. Okay. So anyways, we're not going to deploy this way because we already have a cloud service up and running. Okay. So I'm not going to do this through here. But if you are going to just get those two files, you do it from here while creating the cloud service. Since we already have a cloud service created, I'm going to go and basically update the cloud file because right now, the cloud service, this is what it is, right? First to staging, that's where it is. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say that, hey, I got a new package with new content, which actually says manual deployment content, and I want to update that. The way you do that over here is quite simply clicking on update. Once you click on update, you can see that it's similar to how we were creating a new service, but everything else is already there. And what we are going to do here, what we are going to do here is that we are going to select those files. So I'm going to say New deployment, that's just the label. I'm going to get the new package. This is the new package the developer gave me. The configuration, this is what the developer gave me. And I'm going to come over here and say allow the update role size change, deploy even if. So this is the one we talked about, and this is the one where it's basically telling us that, you know, if the role sizes change or the number of roles change, it's okay that you go ahead and put that because, um, you know, uh, if you do not have two instances and if you just have one and you're reducing that or doing whatever, there will be a downtime. You don't want that, right? So it's basically asking you to accept that. Let's click on OK. It's actually updating the deployment. So we're going to pause and wait here for the deployment to update. So when we come back over here and refresh this page, we are going to get the new content. So as you can see, I'm manually changing the content right now rather than from here. Obviously, we would have published it from here as well, but I'm not doing that. So let's go back here. Oops, here. It's still updating the deployment. All right, it looks like successfully started to update deployment and it's running. Let's go to Ranger Web 1 here and click on refresh. All right, as you can see, the page got updated here. Manual deployment content. This is where this is what we were trying to upload, and that's what it's done. So it went and updated the roles and everything. Okay, that has the old content. Let's go over to the staging one and see if we click over here the basic is still there. So ideally, what you want to do is when you make these changes, you probably want to go to staging first rather than going to the production. But for our demonstration, I just went over here to production slot. You could have done that in staging and the whole concept of first doing some sort of QA and testing before you update that. But this is how it is done. So I hope you understood the concept of these two files, the package file and the configuration file, okay? Let's go into a little bit of details in the configuration file. So if you go to the web roles here and go to the properties, you can actually see it's basically telling you how this web role is configured. It's looking at the VM sizes. We had the small size here, HTTP endpoint diagnostics. So there's a bunch of stuff that it shows over here, endpoints, local storage, certificates, caching. So it's basically showing you the details for the Ranger web role. And this is for the worker role, okay? So in the worker role, you can come over here. You can also see the settings and everything else here. The thing that I wanted to tell you is that you have to remember that these all properties, when you click from here, just basically come from the configuration files, the service definition file as well as the service configuration file. Okay, it's nothing fancy over here, but if you go, let's close this too and go to the configuration file here. This is the one we want to talk about. Let's go double click on that. It's basically an XML file, right? And it provides all the configuration. So if you look here at the XML tags here, you can see the role name Ranger Web Role 1, the Ranger Worker Role 1. It has the username and password that we were putting in, and little bunch of stuff like that, how the web roles are going to be configured, the worker roles are going to be configured. If you recall the service definition file, let's go double click on that. It actually tells you that what are going to be there. So it's telling you that there's going to be a ranger, there's going to be a web role here, there's going to be a worker role here. It's telling you what's going to be the size of the VMs. I have a small. It's going to tell you what the endpoints are. So my endpoint for the web role was port 80. So that's what the service definition file was telling me. Okay, so there is a little bit of a difference uh, between these two XML files, and it's good to actually see what these are. If you are a developer, you probably want more control. You might have more things that are added here, and feel free to look up in MSDN on all the other XML tags that go in here and the other configurations that you can do. We will be doing one more configuration here as part of my next topic here. But this is what the service definition file and the configuration files have in here. Okay. I'm just thinking I'm probably missing something here. There's one thing I want to talk about was the size here. Yeah. That's the one I want to talk about. You see the size over here. So these are the VMs, right? Based on our last session, I did mention that these are going to be the sizes of your virtual machines. Be very careful about one thing. For the PaaS, which is a cloud service, and infrastructure as a service, IaaS, the virtual machine sizes are actually different. So if you're coming from the creating virtual machines, the session we had, and if anywhere, you're more likely as an infrastructure person used to creating a virtual machine and looking at A1, A2, A3 sizes. These sizes for the web roles are and the worker roles in the PaaS or service is almost similar, but not necessarily the same. Okay, so if you there's a cool command called get Azure role size. Yeah, this is a pretty cool commandlet. If you actually click on this, it will show you um, the details of the roles that are available for this worker roles and web roles as far as the VM sizes are concerned. As you can see, they're similarly named, similar in, most of the stuff is similar to the VMs, but the core and the memory count might be a little different. Okay, so be sure that you understand that. I just wanted to make sure that I do not forget to mention this over here. Okay, so the thing that I was talking about was the cloud configuration here. Right now, let's explore something. We are in production slot. We know that we have two instances here. Okay, two small size instances here. We have a public IP address. This is the VIP address that kind of constitutes to what this name is going to be. So we know that's the public address. No big deal. Um, let's go double click on this row. I want to open this up and show you something. When you open this up, you'll see that obviously the public IP address is going to be the same as this one. This is the cloud services IP address, the VIP, right? Or the public IP. These are going to be the same because from what do we know about cloud services is that the cloud service will include the roles and it will have one public address to get to those roles. So absolutely the same. But the private IP address, as usual, since we did not talk about any virtual network or anything, Azure provides you these IP addresses, which is perfectly fine. However, think of one thing. What if this was a part of your larger infrastructure? Means you have an Azure tenant with virtual networks created. You have separate virtual networks for different things. You connect from your on-premises and stuff like that. So there are chances that you might not want to just randomly deploy this cloud service and this worker roles and web roles, but you might want to deploy in a VNet. Means you are going to have a network which is already created where all your other virtual machines are, and then you can have your cloud service that will connect to the virtual network. It will be situated there. So technically, this IP address will be the same IP address range of all your virtual networks. What are the benefits? Well, there are a lot of benefits. So this web role or the worker role might actually want to do something with your SQL server. So it needs to be on the same network as your other servers are, the SQL server is, or the SharePoint server is. So you want to make sure that those are all part of the same VNet. You also might want to make this on the VNet because you have a site-to-site connection, tunnel. So you are connecting from your on-premise to the cloud, and you have a hybrid scenario where you move files or access files. So you might want to have that tunnel, and for that tunnel, if you recall our networking, the networking sessions, it has to be through a VNet. So that means that these virtual machines have to sit in that VNet. So there is a way to actually deploy your cloud service in a virtual network, and that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to close all of this. I'm going to go and I'm going to actually delete all of that. So it's going to be clean. And then I'm going to create a virtual network with you. And we are also going to then go and deploy into a virtual network. And I'll show you how to do that. So let me clean up everything and come back. Okay. All right. Looks like everything is nice and clean here. Okay. Let's go to browse everything. I should not see anything in here. Perfect. So the first thing we are going to do here is going to create a virtual network, a VNet. And the way we do that is click on New, go to Networking, Virtual Network, and in here we are going to create a virtual network. Let's go ahead and create here. Okay. So we are going to name our virtual network something like, I don't know, Ranger VNet. Nice and easy. Let's go to the address space. I'm going to make my block as 10300. My subnet name will be Cloud Service Subnet, perhaps. And I'm going to make my block something like 10.3.1.0, and it's going to be 24-bit. That's 255, 255, 255. If this does not make sense to you, feel free to go and watch my networking videos so you understand what is this all about. But I think this will work. Let's go click on OK. All three check marks. All good. Okay. Resource group. We will call this resource group error loading file. Okay. The tile is not loading here. Seems like there's a bug. So it shows me for a moment there that what the resource group is going to be, but then it just disappears. That's interesting. No wonder they call it the preview portal. It's still in preview. All right, I'll just call my resource group. Location East US 2. Feel free to pick the one you have. I'll try one more time. Come on, come on. It's almost there. This time it showed up, but it don't let me take a name. Gets a little better. Yeah, why don't you guys fix the error on this page before continuing? Anyways, we'll just call ours group. Click on create. So it's creating the VNet for us. All right, looks like the VNet has been created. Let's go to browse everything. I should see my VNet over here. Cool. So let's go ahead and create our cloud service real quick. Compute. Let's scroll down. Cloud service. Create. New one. We'll call it Ranger website. Okay. Subscription the same. Let's take the old resource group we had called group because it was created when we created the VNet. Location. It's going to be East US 2. And I'm not going to put the package here or anything over here. Okay. Let's go ahead and click on create. Wait for the cloud services to be done. All right, looks like that was done real quick. Go over here, should see Ranger website group, Ranger VNet. Ranger website should not have any deployment. Perfect. Let's go to our Visual Studio. I'm going to create a new project, just like the last time. Okay. Cloud service. We'll just call it Azure Cloud Service 1 because I went and, as you can see, deleted everything from my projects when I was cleaning up. So we can give it the same name. It's asking us the cloud service solutions. So this is the definition. I'm going to put a worker role and I'm going to put a web role. So web role, worker role are here. I'm going to call my web role this time Ranger web role to keep it nice and simple. And we'll call this Ranger worker role. Okay, perfect. It's going to be a very small solution. Empty. Let's create the project. All right, the project's created. This is the worker role code, so I don't want that. Let's go do similar stuff like last time. I'm going to add on the web role a basic new item for an HTML page. We'll call it default.htm. Default actually makes it the first page. Okay, this time in the body, I'm going to say hello world, same thing, um, cloud service on a VNet. So the whole goal is this time to create the cloud service. Oh, I put hello. Okay, hello world CS on a VNet. So the whole goal this time is to actually deploy this cloud service on a predefined virtual network so we get all the benefits of a virtual network, and those roles and services are going to be on there. Okay, so there's a couple of things we need to do. If you deploy just how it is, it's obviously not going to know anything, right? So you're just going to go and deploy and get the IP address from whatever Azure provides. But since we have a VNet, we need to let this cloud service know that there's going to be a virtual network where you need to deploy. Okay, and the way you do that is obviously in a service configuration file. Okay, in service configuration file, what we are going to do is we are going to put in something quite interesting. I do have it already open and written in a notepad here. So basically, we are going to put the network configuration tag there, okay? This element will make sure that it goes and identifies the virtual network. So our virtual network name is Ranger VNet. It's going to take two roles, right? It has two roles. One is the Ranger web role. Well, there was no one there. So one was the Ranger web role and the one was the Ranger worker role. And we are also telling that take these roles and put them in this subnet. If you had more roles, so if you had Ranger Web Role 1, Ranger Web Role 2, you take this entire section and you basically just copy and paste them and make sure all of them are listed under the address assignments, which sits under the network configuration element. Okay, so this should suffice for us. The Ranger Web Role here, this is the name, Ranger Web Role, Ranger Worker Role, Ranger Worker Role. So we're going to take this entire thing, copy it, and make sure that it's pasted. So service configuration, right after the roles, it is going to be pasted over here. Okay, so this is what tells this cloud service deployment that you need to go and deploy yourself on this VNet, Ranger VNet. Okay, so that's all that there is to it to deploy to a virtual network. So let's go ahead and publish this. So if I go and do a publish, this is the right one, yes. It's looking for a store name. I'm going to go and give Ranger store some random over here just to alleviate any confusion. East US2. I'm going to make mine locally redundant. Let's go create. And it already went and picked up the cloud service, which was the Ranger website, right? Ranger website. Yes, it's the production one. Right. So we are going to go directly to production environment slot. This time I'm not going to put the enable desktop just for the sake of it. Go over here and go click publish. This obviously is going to take time, so I'll pause and I'll be right back, okay? So while that deploying is going on, let's go over here. I want to actually go to the website here. The web service here. It seems like it's still deploying the virtual machines, but I think it's almost ready. So let's double click one of these and I want to show you what happened here. So if you recall that our public IP address is obviously the VIP, it's the same, but look at the private IP address this time. It's 10314. Look at the worker role here, 10315. So it seems like that now it is actually creating in our virtual network. So if we go to our virtual network real quick to show you that it is, let's go to all settings to show you the address space so you'll understand. So all our IP addresses are supposed to be from 10.3 and it's supposed to go. So we went, this was the address space. Our subnet was 10.3.1. So everything was 10.3.1 whatever. So it picked up 10.3.1.4 and 10.3.1.5. So any other virtual machine that would be within this subnet would actually have access to those systems and they should be able to communicate with each other. Okay, so that's what I really meant by deploying a cloud service to a VNet. And so let's go back to our slides real quick. This is really what it is, that you put in this in the service configuration file, and you describe uh, what's the subnet that's going to be, I mean, what's the VNet that's going to be, what the subnet it's going to be, and the roles will be in which subnet. So as you can see, they are all in the same subnet. If you had more roles, you just add more instance address over here and add those nodes in here as well. So that concludes that. I'm not going to go into so much more details because everything else is really the same, except that the cloud service is in that VNet. The other way to deploy would be actually to do this in PowerShell. And this is going to be pretty simple, so a hands-on, you can give it a shot, run this commandlet, and it should work for you. What we are telling here is that publish as your service project. This is the commandlet you have to remember. The location is East US2, but the location you need to be in. The slot, if you recall, so in this example, the slot I was putting in was staging, and the package was the package name. So I named mine rangerweb.cspkg, so that's the package name. The configuration tag is actually the configuration file, cscfg. So if you recall, there are two files, right? The package file and the configuration file. And I'm going to give an arbitrary deployment name over here. Okay, so this is another way of doing this. So I'm going to conclude over here this session. The only one thing that we did not go through was the CS pack. Feel free to look it up in MSDN. It's a little bit more complicated way of doing this. It goes and creates the package. I mean, you have to manually create the package. There's a bunch of switches to go and upload that. So it's the CS pack command line too. But chances are the way we are doing this is probably the way you will be doing it, through Visual Studio or through PowerShell, or just manually from the management portal or the preview portal. Okay, so this concludes our session over here. And in review, today we talked about what a cloud service package was, what are the two files that went into a package. We talked about the cloud service definition file as well. We talked about the two slides, the production and staging slot, where you can actually go and put it in those either one of those slots, but chances are you want to do this in staging and get everything checked out, then swap it or do a VIP swap with the production to swap the resources. Okay. Then we also went over deploying a cloud service to a virtual network. So all your other virtual machines on site, if you have a VPN site-to-site tunnel, should be able to connect to. So chances are that's one possible way of doing this. If you want it to be secluded altogether, isolated by itself, then obviously you can do it in the regular normal way where you do not put any VNet information in the configuration file. Okay, and then I just showed you the commandlet on what and I mean on how to um, publish this through PowerShell with those two files, the publish as your service project. Okay, so as usual, our training site is at cloudranger.net/Azure-training. YouTube is where you are viewing this, Cloud Ranger Network. Contact me on Twitter at Sean Ismail. If you are my previous viewers or past viewers, you'll notice that my Twitter handle changed a little bit to reflect my name. My email is still at sean@cloudranger.net. It does forward it to my work email, so I might reply from my Tutor Lead or Cloud Ranger Net email, whatever. And if you wish to connect and have a conversation, you can do that on YouTube comments, or if you want to connect and keep in touch, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. All right. Okay. Thank you for watching this session, and I will